All right. How you guys doing this morning? You know, Friday, my son-in-law asked that very question Friday night after we had been out all day, and we had been doing, Winterfest, of course. We do the late sessions, and he asked that question, how you doing? And everyone said, good, great, fine, kind of like you guys did. My grandson immediately responded, I'm tired. He wasn't being sarcastic. He wasn't trying to be funny. They had driven all day. They left at 6 in the morning, drove all day, and they're used to going to bed at night. And it was 10:30 at night, and we were just starting our devotional. So it was after midnight before we actually wound up in bed. But he was just being authentic. I believe that if we're really going to be the tribe that is truly united, we're going to have to start with being authentic and transparent. Now, with that being said, I'm tired. We've had a good week. The last few weeks have been kind of hectic. Actually, the last 3 months have been kind of, actually the last 2 years have been kind of hectic. And if y'all were honest this morning, you would say the same thing. It's been kind of weird, hasn't it? I did some studies. I tell you what, I was doing some reading this week, how churches have how they've gotten over the COVID thing. The average church in our country today has lost 30% of their people as a result of COVID. 30%. Last Sunday, of course, you can't judge by what we have in here today because we have so many people gone. Last Sunday we had 280. Guess how many we were having before COVID hit? 280. That says a lot. We had a lot of things that we've been trying to do. God's blessing us, but it's still been a struggle, hasn't it? Today, I want to do what I just talked about. I want to be authentic, and I want to be vulnerable, which is really not easy. It's scary when you're trying to be vulnerable. Now, I began by saying I was tired. Well, I don't believe that I have to work to be saved. I don't believe that at all. As a matter of fact, Ephesians chapter 2, 8 and 9, for it is by grace that you have been saved through faith, and this is not for yourself. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. I don't do what I do because of what I can get. That's not it. But the same Paul said this. He said, and I kind of feel the same way Paul says when I do the things that I do, when I do what I do, when I do what I do. You know what I mean? In 1 Corinthians 15:10, he said, but I work harder than them all. Yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me. I think actually I'm probably busier now than I was 30 years ago. Isn't that crazy? Part of that is I'm seeing myself at a stage of my life where I know I'm 65, I'll be 66 in April. I'm at a stage of my life where I'm saying, Mitchell, you don't have but so long. And you better get as much done as you can while you can. And so I feel more motivated today than I've ever been. I see more opportunity today than I've ever been. I never get tired of the work, but I do get tired in the work. Does that make sense? I don't get tired of the work that I'm doing. I think I have the most exciting job in the world. I get to see people in so many different ways, in so many different circumstances. Add upon that what I do in the community-wise. I round it out with working with the ambulance service and working with rescue squad and things of that nature. I just feel I am so blessed to be able to serve in so many different ways. And it's tiring. It really is. And sometimes it's more than most. We had a great group that went to Winterfest this year. it's probably a bigger group as we've had in probably the last 15, 20 years. We had 81 that signed up for Winterfest this year, plus we had 30 that came from the Alverton church that joined us over there. We had a great group. This is our group that was there. This is just all us. There's about 15, 20 missing out of that. There was another group that had gone to eat, and they hadn't gotten back when they took that picture. But that's our group. Reminds me so much. And I told y'all when we were doing that, how we had our families involved. Really good stuff. And I'm really excited about the things that were going on. We had that great group there, and there were again the 30 from Bowling Green, and we had some from Illinois, and there was, of course, Bobby and Melissa was from there, and everybody just seemed like they were getting so much. Now this morning we're continuing our study on Survivor Series, but one of the neat things about it was going to Winterfest was that they were so much about what they were talking about is what I've been talking about. We started this series talking about, number one, you have to choose your alliance, right? That you either, all of us choose an alliance. It's who or what you choose that alliance with. And I used Wilson as an example of that. You will align with something or somebody. And so the way we need to start is we need to make our alignment with God. Isn't that right? And once we make that alignment with God, we have an alignment with the person of God. We have an alignment with the people of God. And so that's the church. And we talked about that. And we talked about, then last week we talked about how that because we have that alignment with the people of God, you've got to maintain the peace in the tribe. That you're working with other people. And we used a verse, primarily Psalm 133, verse 1, behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. How good, how pleasant, how lovely, how wonderful, how great when they work together. And Ephesians says, endeavoring to keep the unity of the faith. It's something that you endeavor to do. It's not something you just ease into. You've got to work at that to keep that peace in the tribe. And there was so much that I was able to take away from Winterfest this year because they talked about the idea of survival in Winterfest this year. They were actually titled it Shipwreck, but it was all about survival. They talked about the Titanic and those that survived and those that didn't. Then they talked about some other survivors. The next night, on Friday night, they talked about a guy that had been in he was diving, him and 3 other guys from the church, an elder and a dentist that went to church there and a deacon, and himself were there diving, scuba diving in Florida, and they're 100 feet below the water, and they start seeing these things falling around them. The boat sank while they were down there. And how they survived. They were in the water for over 26 hours. In the water. Can you imagine floating 20-something miles out at sea with a group of guys for 26 hours? And they talked about their survival. And so much of what they talked about tied to what we did. They spoke about different ones who had survived and again, those that didn't. I've had a lot on my heart for a while. And I want to share some of those things that I picked up in the last few days. I've planned on, matter of fact, this sermon that I'm preaching this morning, I've probably changed 5 times. And finally, I threw it out and started over. So if it looks a little disjointed this morning because I didn't get in till late last night and I put this sermon together last night, I stopped on the way and picked up a couple of things to be able to do that. But because I think it's that important, and it was speaking so much of what that I needed to say. And there's some things that I needed to cover. One of the things we talked about in the session on Friday night was the main verse that they used was, in this world you will have trouble. But take heart. I have overcome the world. And I love what they said about that. They said the speaker said that in this world, there's some things you don't have control of. The first thing you don't have control over is trouble. All of us have troubles. You got them, I got them, we all have them. And you don't have any control over the troubles. Now you could say, well, sometimes I cause my own troubles, and that's true. But whether you cause them or not, the Bible says, yea, and all who will live godly in Christ Jesus, we're going to have persecution. We're going to have troubles. We're going to have trials. We're going to have tribulations. Jesus said, don't be concerned when those come. They were against me. They're going to be against you. So in this world, you're going to have troubles. But then they said that, those are things that you don't have control over. And then the second thing he says, I have overcome the world. Jesus has overcome the world. You don't have control over that. So where do I step in this scenario here? And that's pretty much what we talked about Friday night, was the fact that there are things beyond your control, but there's one thing you have control over. That was the middle part of the verse. Take heart. Even in trials, even in troubles, even in tribulations, you can overcome if you take heart. Now, I know you're wondering what I got this on for. Let me explain this to begin with. Y'all remember Indiana Jones? When I actually started this series, I bought this coat for this series here, and after I got it in, I thought, I was thinking to myself, I bought this. Of course, I'm going to do a vacation Bible school. I've already got one lined up in a couple of years that's actually that's in Indiana Jones theme. But when I bought it, I thought, I'm going to do this for Survivor. And then when I got it in, I thought, wait a minute, Indiana Jones really didn't have anything to do with Survivor. Why? I don't know why did this or anything. But anyway, that was God's providence working with it. But I remember Indiana Jones, and who was Indiana Jones? Anybody can tell me? What? Yeah, he's a movie character. But what was in the movie, what was he? What was his profession? Anybody know? He was an archaeologist. He was an archaeologist, went around the world and got all these different things. And one of them, one of my favorites was, you remember this one? The Search for the Holy Grail. This is actually a replica of the very one they used in the movie. This is the Grail that they used in the movie right here. I've had this for some time. Actually, the reason I have this is because I preached that sermon, whether y'all remember or not, the one on the cup, and I used that for that. But the reason I had to get that was because I had another one that I had. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But Indiana Jones would go, and he would go and get these artifacts that were world-changing. And one of the things, he had it in a pouch just like this. And remember in the movie when he passed the little area there and they got across the edge, all of a sudden it's, the earthquake happened and it opened up and he dropped the pouch and they almost died trying to reach to get that pouch because they wanted the Holy Grail. They knew it was saved in the thing. Remember, he got shot and they drank it and it cured him, and his dad got shot and drank it, it cured him, and all these different things. And they were picking right. Yes, I think his dad was the only one that got shot. But he had drank, but if you picked the wrong one, there was all these grails in there, and you picked the wrong one, you died. Yeah, it was creepy, wasn't it? It was. But Indiana knew that, get the cup of the carpenter. Wouldn't you love to have Jesus' chalice, the one that he drank out of? I can't imagine. Of course, this is not it. And the one in Indiana Jones wasn't really it. But the idea was they had all these elaborately decorated ones and all this. But as an archaeologist, he could recognize that. I've been to some places where been able to do some archaeology myself. I went to Greece. I've been to several cities in Greece and actually visited a couple of archaeological sites in Greece. Went to Egypt, and we visited an archaeological site in Egypt. In Egypt, we bought this right here. Y'all have heard the story of the alabaster box? This is one right here. This is an alabaster box. And that's alabaster. We bought that when we went to Egypt. This is from Athens, Greece. And got that when we went to Athens, Greece. It's got the seal that's authentic saying it's from Greece right there. They put a seal right there. So, so it's authentic. But, all these different things. When we were in the class last night, though, Jeff brought out a item that he had. And it was really surreal because he got to talking about where he got it from. It was 1,000-year-old cup from Thessalonica. And the guy that gave it to him was a a guy that I know, his name is Tim Brindley. Tim Brindley was with us in Russia. He had previously been the missionary in Athens, Greece. He'd been there for a lot of years, and he had been able to go to some of these archaeological sites. He still goes back and forth, and he had gotten, actually helped dig that particular cup up. And he had that. And Jeff said, when I got this, I thought, man, this thing is unbelievable. This thing is irreplaceable, and it's so valuable, and all these different things, even though it had a chip in it. And he told Tim told him, says, really, it's not that valuable. He says, over there, clay pots are a dime a dozen. That's, that was what they had. It was kind of like our paper cups in our day. They would take them, they'd break them, they'd throw them away. You could dig just about anywhere over there and you'll find one. Is what he said. They're everywhere. And so I got thinking about it. I said, well, I can beat Jeff. His is only 1,000 years old. I have an item here that I have in my collection. This dates back to the 1st century, Jesus' time. This thing, can you imagine? It was from the Athens area, actually, and pretty valuable, I would think. Pretty interesting. I mean, 2,000 years old. I don't know if y'all can see it in the back there, but okay. I'm glad it didn't break. Oh, well, there it goes. I guess I need to clean it up. It's all in pieces. You'd think it wouldn't be worth much. But I've heard story of, we live in a disposable world. What do you do with that? What do I do with it now? Actually, it didn't come from Greece. I stopped and picked it up at Hobby Lobby last night on my way here. It's not 2,000 years old. I heard somebody go, oh, when he dropped that. So it's not that valuable. I bought it at Hobby Lobby last night, but I bought it to make a point. We live in a disposable world, don't we? If we break something, what do? Throw it away. That's what I'll do with this. I'll throw it away. That's what we do. Japan has an unusual custom in their land. I don't know whether you ever heard of it. It's called, if I can get there, kintsugi. And it's called the Golden Journey, or also known as the Golden Repair. And rather than, if a piece of pot breaks, something happens to it, they don't throw it away. Instead, my watch is talking to me. Oh, it looked it up. They take that piece of pottery, and I meant to put a picture on there. They take that piece of pottery, and they collect all the pieces that they can, and they take gold, and they weld it together with gold. And when it gets back together, it's actually worth more than it was before it started. Look it up on Google sometime. Google it. You could actually buy them online. I looked it up this morning just to see what they look like. And the thing about it is when they do that, this thing that you and I would just so readily throw in the garbage becomes increasingly valuable. And the more broken it is, the more value it has. And it's not wasted. They do that. Now, this container I have here, it's broken. But when I look at the Bible, I see so much brokenness. I mean, you could just start from the beginning. Adam, very first man. Adam, broken. They had it made. They sinned. God put them out of the garden, had to live the rest of their life broken. Then there was Noah. Noah, you get to Noah, and Noah was there, and God used Noah. He was going to reboot on the earth. What happens when Noah gets, he's there 100 and some days he's there and all this, and Noah, he gets there and gets land and gets drunk and lays naked in his tent or in a cave. Broken. Or how about this one? My mind's gone blank. I am tired this morning, I just tell y'all. Rahab, y'all know who Rahab is? Rahab is actually in the genealogy of Jesus. Rahab was one who helped the people of Israel when they were going on and spying out the land. The spies were in there and they were checking out Jericho. Remember what was going on with all that? And there was they were there. There's a problem. They were to get out, and she helped them escape. And because of that, Rahab became, she got in the lineage of Christ. But I mean, Rahab, a harlot, a prostitute, broken. David's out one night. Here's a big piece I'll give him because David was pretty good. I mean, he's a man after God's own heart. He's out one night looking where he shouldn't, doing what he shouldn't. He takes another man's wife, has her husband killed. Broken. You go on down through and character after character after character after character. Then you come to the New Testament. And there's one that you read the story and there's a betrayer. Y'all know who that was, don't you? Your first thought's Judas, but there's another one. His name is Peter. Two traitors that night. One planned it, executed it. The other, it happened. A traitor to the Savior. You know what the difference was in them? One of them didn't go to the Savior. The other one was sorrowful. One was sorrowful, repentant. I mean, it talks about Peter, how he cried and mourned. The other one killed himself, thinking that there was no way out. Broken. Then there's another guy, terrorist, in the Bible. Do you know there's a terrorist in the Bible? This terrorist in the Bible, he went out and killed people because they believed something different than he did. Believed, that his religion was different from theirs, and therefore they were wrong. And he was hard on them. And he would gather people around, and what they would do when they find these people, they would take them and he would help them get stoned. His name was Saul. We know him as Paul. Broken. There's another piece here. That's Mitchell before he became a Christian. He did all these things. He didn't do what God wanted him to do. He was disobedient. Church didn't really mean anything to him. Broken. But then there's another one. There was a Mitchell that was. And there's Mitchell today. And he is broken. All of us are. He is broken. You would think, 35 years of preaching, what are you talking about? He's broken. He doesn't always do what he needs to do. He doesn't always do what's right. I know it's hard to believe that preachers don't ever do everything just right, but they don't. There's been a lot of stuff going on the last few weeks. And, there's been some, just things going on. I don't know whether y'all know I scuba dive. And one of the things I was really interested when he told that story about scuba diving. And I scuba dive. And one time I went with a group of police officers to get some training in Florida, and we went diving. And one thing I found out that when I was down there, we always go in twos. You always go in two because if somebody has trouble, you got to have somebody be there to help them. So me and this guy, we were diving a wreck, and we were going down through, and we got usually follow the line that comes from the anchor, and you follow it down, and you try to stay pretty close to that. But we'd gotten around the other side of the ship that we were looking at, and then we saw some little wildlife, and they don't discourage you from doing that. We got to looking at that. But there, unbeknownst to us, there was a lot of undercurrent. And that undercurrent took us out, and when we popped up getting ready to go back to the boat, you could barely see the boat off in the distance. My first thought was, I've heard those stories, it's usually in a foreign country, where they forgot they left them. There's a whole movie about a guy that was left out at sea because he was diving. You've seen that movie? Well, that was the first thought that popped in my mind when I came up out of that water and I could see that boat way out there. Of course, one of the things I have on my BC, my buoyancy compensator, is a whistle. So, man, I blew that whistle. And I blew that whistle. And it would just happen to be a very calm day. And they heard us and they came and got us. But it could have been a different story. Well, same with us. I've been around here some, and there's been a little undercurrent. And, undercurrent will get you off course. Bad. And so, there's people that, talking about some things they probably shouldn't talk about, or having some thoughts about things, and they really ought to come talk to you about it, didn't. And therefore, doubt was given and things like that. So I found out about that, and it kind of makes me angry. And then I'm doing all the different things that I'm doing, and I'm not making excuses for anything, but I'm just telling you what's going on. And tremendously busy. And so I talked to somebody, and we had this sweetheart banquet, and somebody came to me and was, and rightfully so, things didn't go as good as it should have as far as the child care. I learned a good lesson with child care on our sweetheart banquet. We will never do that again with teens without an adult. I got cornered right at time for church. And that's never a good time. Don't fuss at me before church starts. That's never a good time. Because my mind's trying to, get prepared for worship services. So anyway, and then the next day I talked to somebody, and we talked about it. And but in that conversation, other things popped up and said some things that hurt my feelings. It hurt my feelings. I'll just tell you. And after that, of course, we were supposed to meet again. So met again later, and after the first one, the more I thought about it, this is how hurt feelings go, and it's just, I think human nature. That hurt turned to anger, and then I was angry, and so talked about something entirely different, and I got mad. I lost my patience, and I said, I didn't say anything ugly. I just was cutting off and not listening and prejudging probably. And some of the things that were said I probably was sensitive to. So I I was angry. So after a little bit after that, this is all in 1 week, this last week, on top of everything getting ready for Winterfest. This is all last week. And then after that, Thursday morning, Wednesday night, I got a call from my neighbor. We've been trying to get hold of her. She had been sick for a while, and Gail and I had checked on her and everything, and we've been calling her, and she wouldn't answer her phone, but she's notoriously doesn't answer her phone, and she will not return a phone call. So we didn't think anything about it. Well, she calls me on Wednesday and says, I've been in the hospital for the last month. I said, well, we've been trying to get a hold of you. And she says, yeah, and she doesn't have any children here and everything. So she said, can you, on Thursday morning, come by and pick up my stuff? She was in Cookville. They're going to take me home, but the people that take me home will not transport my stuff. So I said, okay, I'll take your stuff home. So, I got up early that morning. I left at 6 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. I had a lot to do on my plate because that was the day I had to go by Sam's Club and pick up all the things. I thought, well, I'll pick up the stuff because I'm going to Cookville anyway, go to Sam's Club. And so I went and picked up her stuff. And I said, well, I don't need to leave till she gets checked out because, what if they don't get her like she needs to? So I stayed. And I actually went over and helped with the vaccine distribution. And so somebody's calling me. Amber Brown should know we're in church services. But anyway, y'all tell her that I refuse to take her call. But anyway, so I went over and got this stuff, loaded up, went and got the stuff, loaded her stuff, and I thought, well, I'll go to Sam's Club, get all my stuff and all that. But anyway, on my way to Cookville, the person that I was feeling bad because I was dismissive and all the different things that I did with that person I had that conversation with. So I called him on my way to Cookville to apologize. And I, called and said, I'm sorry that I was dismissive and these things and all this. And so then I was asked, well, did you do a particular thing that I was asked to do? And I thought, I don't know that there's a good way for me to answer that question without making this worse. So, and I was tired, and I was trying to, and I really didn't want conflict to go any further. So my response was, no, but I talked about it, which to talk about it was true, but I had done it. So I lied. I lied. Trying to avoid controversy. The problem was this person knew that I lied. So that didn't make it any better. But, I tried, and there's no excuse. I did. But, I struggled with it. Of course, I apologized again and again, over and again. But I'm thinking, you talk about these things, and it's so easy. I don't care what somebody does to me. I don't have any right not to treat them right. Period. I used to tell my kids that all the time. I don't care what somebody else does to you. You don't have a right to be ugly back. And so anyway, all that, and then it's interesting. I'd only gotten like 3 hours sleep that night. And then Friday, I got 4 hours sleep. Last night, I got 3 hours sleep. And so all that together, and then there's the anger that I had, the shame that I felt, and, because you're too lazy to try to just do what you need to do. All those different things. I'm thinking, broken. And we all get there. And I'm so glad that I serve a God that forgives. And I'm so glad that I serve a God that will allow me to do things. And you know, one thing though that this taught me, I thought, you know, what do you do? And I've told this story to y'all before. I'm going to end with this story, but I told y'all, you know, and make the application here. I told you a story about the time, matter of fact, I think I told it not too long ago, where when I was in Mount Carmel, Illinois, and we had a fire. But I think the best way is to show you some of the things going on. It was a cold night in January, and it was pretty rough outside. It snowed, and we got a call. I got a call out. Well, I was one of the first ones there. Oh, it's not going to play through. That's all right. But anyway, that's the truck. There it goes. Well, no, it goes again. Will it go to the next slide? That's how I roll. But I pulled up there, and I was one of the first ones there, actually, one of the first on the scene. And except for the ladder truck, which they had 2 full-time fire employees there, and then they had and then what we call paid volunteers. And so here he comes, here he comes, here he comes, here he comes. We thought, and that's the end of it, don't worry about it, it's good, that particular video. So I help set up, and then I'm one of the entry teams for this particular fire department. So me and another guy gets there. You never go in by yourself. But I didn't have a radio, but he did. So we went in. And so as we went in, there was no smoke. They thought, so they sent another cue to the diner, another crew. We went in the back. We worked our way through. We were looking because it had like 7 apartments upstairs in the top part of that building there that you're looking at. Old building. This is part of downtown area of Mount Carmel. We were there, and so we went in the back. We were working our way towards the front. We were just looking. We didn't have a fire hose or anything. We were just making the initial survey, make sure nobody was in there. We didn't see any smoke. It wasn't a problem. So another crew comes in the front door and goes down the stairs to the basement. Another crew comes in and goes upstairs. We make our way around. We get to the stairs, and things started changing. Smoke started coming into the place, and it started getting thicker and thicker. And the hose, I don't know whether you know anything about the hoses for a fire truck, but they're 2-inch hose. When you've got about 100 foot that you've already unreeled, it's pretty heavy. When it's fully charged, it's pretty heavy. So these guys were struggling with a hose upstairs. So the guy that was with me says, I'm going to run upstairs and help them real quick. So I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll stay down here and I'll feed hose up to you guys. So I started feeding hose. While I was feeding hose, fire started coming up through the floor. So I had to pull the hose because you can't leave the hose over the fire. It'll burn the hose up. And next thing I hear is these guys running down the stairs. They run down the stairs, and the flames are coming up through the floor. I'm on the other side here. They don't see me. They run, and they run all the way out. So now I'm there by myself. And I don't have a radio. Things started getting even worse. It got to where you couldn't hardly see your hand in front of your face. Smoke that thick. So I did what I was supposed to do. You try to go back the way you came, and you use the wall as your guide, and you feel your way to the sides. But when you get to places, there's things you got to look out for. One is squishy floors. Another is hot doors. Well, I got over there, and the floor started getting a little squishy. So I thought, well, I can't go any further because evidently my fire must be downstairs is where all this smoke is coming from. So I have to turn around and go back. I said, well, but I don't know where I'm going when I go back. And then I remember there's a hose. that hose is connected. You know where that hose is connected to? Outside. So I'm thinking, follow the hose. Of course, that's part of your training too. Follow the hose. They actually have little marks on there where you can feel, because sometimes they twist and you can't know which, if you don't feel those marks. It's hard to do with gloves on, by the way. But you feel those marks and you can follow your way through. And so I started following through, and I mean, it was getting black smoke. And you could feel the heat. Matter of fact, I had to replace my shield. The heat in this place got so hot that my shield melted on the side. I didn't get burned at all, but my sheet did. The other guy, the two guys that I was telling you ran out, they actually had to take them to the hospital. What happened was their tank ran out of air. We have two different sized tanks. You have a 30-minute or an hour tank on the truck. When I go, I'm a very cautious person, so I'll always grab the 1 hour tank. When I go, they only have a few of them, but I always grab the 1 hour, especially if I'm in an entry tank. So I had a 1 hour tank, so I was lucky there, because I would have already run out by that time too, and they would not have found me. But anyway, I'm crawling. I'm thinking, Mitchell, those flames were coming up through that floor there. That floor may not be too sturdy. So I'm thinking, but that hose is your line, your straight line to help. So I hung on to that hose, and I thought, I'm going to crawl. I'm going to hang on to this hose. I'm not going to let go of the floor. I'll hang on and swing by the hose and pull myself up with the hose. And so I keep going. Made it across, no problem. What unknowns to me that the flames weren't there was because the people that had went downstairs had put out, so they had put water on that, so it wasn't burning anymore. So I crawl around, and I crawl where they went downstairs, and I hear these guys running up the stairs going, "Help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus." I said, there's some help. So I got around, and as soon as he got to the top, you have to crawl, because you get up higher, the heat's so high, superheated gases are above you, and they keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter until finally it explodes. So I crawl in, and I saw him, just barely saw a boot come by me, and I latched onto that boot. And we finally got out. The guy said, "Man, you had an iron grip on." I said, I was not going to get left again. We followed the hose, and we made it outdoors.
Yeah. Hey! Carson 1! What's that?
5 minutes of me coming out. Turn from this. Was a hose that was connected to a truck with people. By the way, when the other guys came out and they said, "Where's Mitchell?" They said, "Well, he didn't come out." Everything stopped. Every person in there was thinking about Mitchell. That was it. What they do is they blast the horn 3 times. When something like that happens, they blasted their air horn. I could hear it. I said, they know I'm here. They blasted the air horn. From that point, nobody says anything. You do not get on the radio. You're not allowed to, because they don't want anything to interfere with anything, because if somebody's in there, they might be able to get to a radio, and they didn't know, they didn't know I didn't have the radio. But so everything stopped. When I came out, guy come up, he said, he was crying. He said, "I thought we lost you. I thought we lost you." Because they were there. There is Mark is real big in the fire department here, and they're a family. They are a family. But I knew that I had a family that was there, that was waiting on me to come out. When I heard that horn blow, I knew they were there. And I knew that hose was connected to a group of people that was there for me, no matter what. They were preparing a team to go in. It's called a RIT team, a rapid entry team that go in to try to get you out quick. Good thing they didn't, because like I say, you see what that was like. It would have been a disaster. We only had 2 that had to go to the hospital. But I'm so grateful that there was something to connect me to the outside. That's the way it is in the church. God has a connection for me to Him. And He's got a group of people. It's called the church. That we're connected. That's what connects us. And without that, it could be a bad story. So what I'm going to do this morning is, I'm telling you, I know there's a lot of brokenness in this room this morning. And we're going to have the invitation here in a minute. You may need it, but we're going to start with me. I've asked Terry. He already knew I was going to ask you to come up. I asked Terry to come up here, and I want to grab hold of that line. Terry's going to call. He's going to call. And what I asked him to do, I said, I want you to pray for me. Pray for forgiveness because of what taking a lazy way and a lie and hurting people. And pray for me for wisdom and strength.
It's humbling. Sit here and listen to Mitchell go through his life and lay it out on the line up here, and to ask me to come up here and pray for him. I feel so inadequate to do that. So he burned his candle at every end, and his church is his passion, his congregation, his family is his passion, and he demonstrates that over and over and over again. He's expressing maybe a little time of weakness, and maybe he said some things that he shouldn't have said, or maybe got in a compromising position and tried to justify him way out of it, or not just tell him the 100% total truth. For me to stand up here and say I'm worthy to pray over him for those infractions, when I examine my life, that's just hard to do. But I know that the Bible tells me that when you don't know what to say, the Holy Spirit's already said it for you. And I know that's going to be the case here, because I do feel inadequate. But I also know that we talked in a place this morning in James, the writer there said that when we approach God, that we need to do it with all boldness and all confidence that He's going to listen to a prayer. And as inadequate as I feel to do it, I'm honored to stand here with my friend. But I just don't know how to put it in words, but I know that you'll help me as much as you possibly can. Father, I just know that Mitchell is such an inspiration in my life. He's an inspiration in the lives of so many people in this country. He touches lives everywhere he goes. Father, my prayer for him would be that as we look at these lamps on the stage, that you continue to put new oil in his lamp, and so that he can shine bright like he always does. And I know that sometimes the lamps get close to empty, and I wonder if that what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. But all I know is it's evident in his work and the fruits of his labor. Mighty servant of you. I just pray that whatever infractions he's got in his life, that you've already forgiven those, that he's already expressed you, and he's already made every effort to make those infractions that you will lift him up and hold his hand, that you'll always hold his hand and carry him through all the trials and tribulations that he endures for us. And thank you so much for that. He's telling us about him and his family and how special they are to us. And I know that the family here is going to continue to grow and prosper because of his leadership. And I just thank you for him. And I pray that you'll bless this congregation, that you'll bless the leadership of this congregation, that support him and stand fully behind him. Because I know that he's going to take us as we go through this journey of life.
Amen. Thank you, Terry. I want to tell you one other thing before we look. You know, I think most of us here have some brokenness in our lives. But just like that Japanese thing, you know, where they take it and they put it together and do that, that's what God does. And it's actually more valuable after it's done. He can take all that brokenness and put it back together. That any of us have. There may be some of you that's struggling with things in your life. I know, like I say, last 2 years, you got to be struggling with something. If not, we have some counselors here. No. She said, no. But, you know, we all struggle. But I want you to know God can put it back together. And I'm fully confident. You know, all this I'm telling you, I haven't told you because I thought, well, no, God hates me. I know better. I was feeling bad because, you know, I wouldn't hurt anybody on purpose for anything. And we all need to know that there's a fix. There's a fix. You know, it's amazing, Terry, how much better I feel right now than when I started this lesson this morning. There's some things I needed to say, and I needed to do it. And I appreciate you guys. And I appreciate your continued prayers. But you may be in that same position. You may need prayers at church. You may need to have that host connected to the group of people that's going to get you to where you need to be. And if we can help you this morning, I'm going to encourage you as we stand, we offer the invitation.